Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for being here today. I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome our guests to HUMA, the HUMA committee today, as well as the people joining us in the gallery and those watching on television. Welcome, Honourable Jean-Yves Duclos, Minister of Families, Children and Social Development. Also joining us today is the Honourable Marian Mahaichuk, Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Labour. Today we are also joined by the Honourable Carla Qualtrough, Minister of Sport and Persons with Disabilities. We are also welcoming some senior public servants today. Welcome to Ian Shugart, Deputy Minister of Employment and Social Development. Also joined by Laurie Sterling, Deputy Minister of Labour, as well. Louise Lavanane, close enough. Senior Associate Deputy Minister and Chief Operating Officer for Service Canada. And finally, from the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, Ivan Dessal, President and CEO. Thank you all for being here today. It's our pleasure to welcome you. I hope that today's committee meeting provides everyone with an opportunity to ask in-depth questions to these ministers and get a sense of their priorities and the scope of their work and their personal insight into where they will be taking their ministries over the next few years. Today, this committee has a unique and rare opportunity to speak with three ministers in the same meeting. I'd personally like to thank them for finding the time and coordinating their schedules to ensure that they that we could see them all at the same time. It's a pleasure to be able to access your thoughts directly, and it's going to be important for our work to get as much insight from you as possible. So thank you again for taking the time with us today. This committee has a mandate to interact with all three ministries to accomplish its goals, which is why I hope that all three of you will feel free to interact a bit when answering questions. If you see that one topic area touches something that you're working on within your ministry, please feel free to chime in and provide details on where your ministries overlap in either programs or responsibilities. At the same time, we have a lot of content to get through today, so I'd appreciate if we could keep the questions and answers as short as possible so that we can give everyone as much time as possible. I should also like to mention that if something comes up and you don't have the full time to address a specific point or concern, please feel free to write to the committee afterwards to clarify any points or provide follow-up information, and the clerk will ensure that your comments are distributed to the entire committee. Well, welcome everyone, and let's begin. We will have opening statements from each of the ministries, and then proceed to the questions. Let's begin opening statements with Minister Qualtrough. Minister.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, it's my pleasure today to be here with Ministers Duclos and Minister Mahaichuk and to address my mandate as Minister of Sport and Persons with Disabilities. As this is my first opportunity to speak to this committee, allow me to say how much I appreciate the scope and impact of your work and your efforts to improve transparency. I want to thank you for the invitation to discuss my mandate letter, which is somewhat unique amongst my counterparts. C'est un honneur pour moi d'occuper la double fonction de ministre des Sports.
It is an honor for me to be able to be both Minister of Sport and Persons with Disabilities and to be part of this dynamic team of ministers. In theory, my mandate is to promote Canadians' health through sport and leisure and to ensure better accessibility for handicapped Canadians, as well as to ensure that their opportunities are increased. In practice, that means implementing a vision that is both ambitious and optimistic. This is a vision of a country where every Canadian can succeed in life. And to succeed, we all must have the support that we need.
Barriers has proven to be most beneficial, whether that's an inaccessible office building or a narrow-minded attitude. I have lived with a visual impairment my entire life, and I've always worked hard to achieve my goals. And I understand what a difference it makes in a person's life when they recognize on a deep personal level that they have the tools they need to succeed. I want every Canadian to experience that sense of triumph, no matter what their goals may be. After my athletic career ended, I practiced human rights law at both the provincial and federal levels, including as chair of the Ministers' Council on Employment and Accessibility in British Columbia. These experiences only fueled my passion for advocacy in the areas of equality and inclusion. I'm eager to put my personal and professional experience at the service of Canadians. My main priority is to lead on an engagement process on federal accessibility legislation, and the first step is to inform the development of legislation that will support all Canadians. Its goal will be to eliminate systemic barriers and deliver equal opportunities for Canadians living with disabilities. To help reach this goal, Budget 2016 included $2.2 million over 2 years to support the full participation of Canadians with disabilities in the process. This is an enormous undertaking, and it would be the first of its kind in the country. There's a significant legislative gap in Canada around accessibility and inclusion. While we have very strong anti-discrimination laws, you have to wait until someone's discriminated against in order to help them. What we need to do is to create a legislative tool that helps us avoid discrimination and exclusion from the beginning. This kind of legislation is very exciting, and it will be transformational if we do it right. I've already begun reaching out to my provincial and territorial colleagues and stakeholder groups to begin the discussion around the foundation of this Act. I intend to ensure that our process is fair, inclusive, and thoughtful. Nous devons amorcer une véritable.
We must start a real dialogue that will lead to actual results. Working with my colleague, the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development, I will hold consultations with provinces, territories, municipalities, stakeholders, and Canadians, regardless of ability. Canada is entering a new era based on leadership and collaboration. For example, on March 11th, we marked the anniversary of the ratification of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Handicapped Persons, which Canada passed 10 years ago. The defense of handicapped persons is constantly gaining momentum, and I am proud to be able to contribute to it throughout my mandate. With this bill, we will have the opportunity to write a new page in history.
To support and promote the initiatives that the Government of Canada already has in place to help people with disabilities participate fully in their communities and workplaces. One very good example of this is an additional $4 million over 2 years for the Enabling Accessibility Fund Community Accessibility Stream that was proposed in Budget 2016. This increase will help fund construction and renovations to improve accessibility and safety for people with disabilities in Canadian communities. When the Prime Minister offered me my current role as Canada's Minister of Sport and Person with Disabilities, he challenged me to take two of my life's true passions and go change the world. This challenge has continued to resonate with me every day for the past 6 months. Accepting this role was both humbling and exciting. There is simply nothing like having this kind of chance to contribute to Canada and to Canadians. I'm extremely fortunate to be doing something that is so deeply personal, to work on policy that is both fulfilling and has such a broad impact on Canadians. I also find it extremely exciting that so much of my personal history and experiences can be of use. Our government is working to improve the lives of Canadians with disabilities, and I'm committed to highlighting the importance of considering this segment of our population in every decision we make around the Cabinet table. I'm proud of the work we do to support Canadians with disabilities. A more active and inclusive Canada provides significant benefits to the economy. While much progress has been made, we can and should do so much more. On behalf of the team here today and those back at the department, thank you very much for the invitation to be with you today. And along with my colleagues, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Minister Qualtrough. Minister Mahajchuk, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a pleasure to be here once again today to discuss my goals as set out in the mandate letter that was given to me from the Prime Minister and discuss the main estimates. You, as members of the Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills, Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities, Standing Committee, provide an extremely important venue to complete our work and provide value to the parliamentary process. But before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we're here on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. First, I'd like to tell you about my areas of responsibility. As you know, I'm the Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Labour. Under my purview, the Department of Employment and Social Development manages a large number of important programs for all Canadians across the country. They include support for federally regulated workers, support for people during these challenging times who've unfortunately lost their jobs, and support for education and training to get Canadians back to work. I will begin by discussing our plans and objectives for the Employment Insurance Program, given that the global drop in commodity prices has resulted in job losses in our country, especially in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Newfoundland and Labrador, increasing the number of workers who are seeking employment insurance. The government believes it's absolutely critical that we have an EI system that can adapt to our changing labour market across the nation to make sure that Canadians get the help they need it when they need it. To that end, our recent budget unveiled a series of new national measures. Let me repeat that the national, all across the country, for all people from coast to coast to coast. Currently, many new workers find it difficult to access EI support when they lose their jobs because of higher EI requirements that restrict access for new entrants and re-entrants, or known as NEARI, to the labour market. Budget 2016 proposes to eliminate these provisions, these NEARI restrictions, which impact so many young and new Canadians, so that they meet the same requirements as other claimants in their regions. This improvement will mean roughly 50,000 additional claimants will become eligible for EI benefits. Effective January 1st, 2017, we are also going to reduce the EI waiting period, or the deductible, from 2 weeks to 1 week at a time when the unemployed, those that are unemployed, often need it most. This will ease some of the pressures on individuals at the front end of their claim when they become unemployed or leave work temporarily due to health or family pressures. We are extending and expanding the working while on claim, which helps individuals so they always benefit from accepting work by allowing them to earn some extra income without losing their benefits. I am pleased to say, on a national basis, we are extending the duration of EI work sharing agreements from a maximum of 38 to 76 weeks. We will also be investing $92 million to hire more EI call center agents to shorten wait times, shorten claim processing, and expand better service to every Canadian. Finally, we are going to reverse some of the negative changes made in 2012 by the previous Conservative government. These measures pressured unemployed workers to accept work at lower rates of pay while having to commute longer times away from their communities and families. Mr. Chair, let me turn for a few moments to the many unemployed Canadians who need help right now, and particularly those who live in parts of the country hardest hit by the plunge in commodity prices. As you know, we have economic regions in our country that have begun experiencing a sudden, sharp, sustained increase in unemployment. To cushion the shock, we're introducing some targeted changes, such as extending EI regular benefits by 5 weeks, up to a maximum of 50 weeks. We are also proposing an additional 20 weeks of EI regular benefits for long tenured workers in these regions, to a maximum of 70 weeks. Mr. Chair, while providing this temporary help, we are also helping to build a workforce that can shift towards high-skilled jobs environment and create the workforce that we need. We will enhance training employment supports by investing a total of $175 million in 2016-17 in the labour market development agreements with the provinces and territories. We will also create a framework to lengthen the role of strengthen the role of union-based apprenticeship training with an investment of $85.4 million over 5 years. These investments will ensure that Canadians get the skills to pursue opportunities for a better future. Canada's Youth Minister, our Prime Minister, has given me the opportunity in my mandate to improve the future of Canada's young people, both through education and job creation. I'm happy to say that our government is already creating more jobs for students. We recently increased the annual budget for Canada Summer Jobs Program by $113 million a year for each of the next 3 years, for a total of $39 million investment, which will double the number of jobs created to nearly 70,000. We are investing another $165 million this year for the Youth Employment Strategy. As our population ages, our country's prosperity will depend on young Canadians getting the education they need to prepare for jobs of today and tomorrow. To incentivize students to work while they study, we'll introduce a flat-rate student contribution to determine eligibility for loans that will allow students to work without worrying about jeopardizing their grant or loan. The rising costs have made getting a post-secondary education more of a burden to families. To help change that, we will expand Canada Summer Grants. Low-income students, middle-income students, and part-time students will see grants increase by 50%. This measure will provide assistance of $1.5 billion over the next 5 years. After consultations with provinces and territories, we plan to expand eligibility for Canada student grants so that even more students can receive non-repayable assistance. We also want to ensure that when students leave post-secondary education, that they have a bit more flexibility on when they have to pay back those worrisome loans. To this end, we will be easing the rules on the Canada Student Loan repayment by ensuring that no borrower will be required to make any repayment until they are earning at least $25,000 per year. Mr. Chair, on a personal level to me, my province, my hometown of Winnipeg, an effort to support skills and employment training for Indigenous peoples is key. The budget proposes a new investment to train Métis, First Nation and Inuit peoples for jobs supporting their communities, including housing construction, water treatment, and local administration. Over the next year, the government will consult with stakeholders, including Indigenous organizations and employers, to work towards renewing and expanding the Aboriginal Skills Employment Training Strategy. Finally, I'd like to turn to my responsibilities and mandate as Canada's Labour Minister. I recently tabled Bill C-4, which proposes to repeal 2 mean-spirited, unfair bills passed by the former Conservative government. C-377 and C-525 forced labour organizations to provide very detailed, wasteful, and not necessary financial information to the CRA, Canada Revenue Agency, and made it harder for unions to be certified as collective bargaining agents in the federal jurisdiction. Mr. Chair, when it comes to a modern workplace, more and more Canadians are struggling to balance work and their personal and family responsibilities outside of work. This is why we committed to amending the Canada Labour Code to allow federally regulated workers to formally request flexible work arrangements. Flex leave. Budget 2016 reiterates our commitment to explore ways to ensure that hard-working middle-class Canadians are better able to manage their work and personal lives. With that, Mr. Chair, I conclude my preliminary remarks.
Thank you, Minister. Minister Duclos.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, chers membres du Comité.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you to the members of the committee for having invited me, accompanied by my two colleagues, to discuss my mandate as Minister of Families, Children and Social Development, as well as the main estimates for our department. I greet all members of the committee, and I would like to congratulate them for their hard work.
Officials for their hard work and their inspiration in their everyday commitment to making our society better. Au sein d'Emploi et Développement Social Canada,
At Employment and Social Development Canada, improving economic and social security for all Canadians is our top priority. In our efforts to achieve this, I have the good fortune to work alongside the Honourable Marianne Mahaichak, Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Labour, and the Honourable Carla Qualtrough, Minister of Sport and Persons with Disabilities. Our department is central to delivering services to Canadians. In fact, along with the Canada Revenue Agency, we are responsible for 95% of government services provided to citizens. A whole host of programs, services, and initiatives fall under the authority of my department. We assist Canadians in literally every stage of their lives, from birth to end of life. That is a great deal of responsibility. Our government has already started to implement measures that will improve the economic and social security of Canadian families through Budget 2016. I would like to concentrate on three main initiatives. First of all, the Canada Child Benefit. Children are the essence of our society. Parents must be able to raise them in the best possible conditions, both for the benefit of families now and for the benefit of our society. Since taking office in November 2015, our Prime Minister has made it very clear that we need to work to help families. That is why we created the Canada Child Benefit. The 2016 budget officially introduced it. This benefit represents the most important social policy innovation in a generation. The benefit will be, first of all, simpler. Families will receive one single payment every single month. Secondly, it will be more transparent because it is tax-free. Families will not have to pay back a portion of their benefits in their tax return. Thirdly, it will be more specific. It will benefit 9 families out of 10, families who need it most, whereas families who earn very high incomes will receive reduced benefits. And fourth, it will be much more generous. Eligible families, child benefits, and those who will benefit from them will see that their benefits will increase by nearly $2,300 on average, tax-free for the 2016-2017 benefit year. For example, a typical family of 4 with an annual income of $90,000 will see an increase from $3,145 to $5,650 tax-free. That's an increase of $2,505. Even more important, with this new benefit, about 300,000 children will be lifted out of poverty in just a few months. With this new measure, poverty rates among children in Canada will be at their lowest level in the history of our country. My mandate also includes seniors programs such as Old Age Security and the Guaranteed Income Supplement. That brings me to my second point. Canadians work hard all their lives. We must enable them to enjoy a comfortable retirement in dignity. This requires new investments, good investments, targeting seniors. We plan to increase additional benefits for the guaranteed income supplement for seniors living alone by nearly $1,000 every year. This measure represents a 10% increase in benefits for the most vulnerable seniors and will benefit approximately 900,000 seniors living alone across Canada. We also propose to cancel the measure raising the eligibility age for old age security and the guaranteed income supplement. The eligibility age will go back to 65 years old. This will prevent 100,000 seniors per year from falling into poverty. Another measure will provide higher benefits for senior couples who have higher living costs and an increased risk of poverty because their health forces them to live separately. That will allow them to collect higher benefits. We are also working to establish a new price index for seniors so that old age security and guaranteed income supplement benefits reflect the rising costs that seniors are actually facing. Thirdly, I would like to talk to you about social infrastructure. Experts worldwide agree that wise, targeted investments in infrastructure are essential. They are necessary for stimulating economic growth and to ensure that economic growth strengthens the middle class. The 2016 budget has allocated $3.4 billion in investments over 2 years, and this will be invested in social infrastructure. These investments will provide all Canadians with the opportunity to fully participate in their communities while fostering economic growth of communities across the country. Investments in affordable housing, early childhood education and childcare, as well as cultural and recreational infrastructure, will considerably improve Canadians' quality of life and strengthen communities, which will make those communities better places to live, including Northern and Aboriginal communities. The government is currently taking measures that will require immediate investment in social infrastructure over the next 2 years. First of all, improve access to affordable housing for over 100,000 individuals and families with low incomes, including seniors. Secondly, renovate and modernize existing social and affordable housing all over the country, including making buildings more energy and water efficient. Thirdly, renovate and build housing in First Nations and Northern communities. Fourthly, renovate and build shelters for women and children who are victims of violence, including Aboriginal women and children. Fifth, improve services that combat homelessness. Sixth, renovate and modernize child care and healthcare facilities on reserve. And lastly, seventh point, fund over 100 community cultural and recreational infrastructure projects throughout the country. It is also my duty to help develop a strategy to re-establish the federal government's role in supporting affordable housing, and that is for our citizens all over the country. We will, therefore, undertake nationwide consultations in the coming year in order to develop a national housing strategy. We will thus ensure that investments in housing, investments done by federal government, will have the widest reach. Homelessness is a reality for far too many Canadians and a major issue for far too many communities. That is why we plan to invest an additional $112 million over 2 years in the homelessness partnering strategy. This is the first increase of the budget for the strategy since the initiative was created in 1999.
Support for the establishment of a national framework on early learning and childcare through a proposed initial investment of $500 million, recognizing the deep connection between childcare and the economic security of all Canadian families. And $100 million of that will be invested in Indigenous childcare and early learning on the reserves and in the North. Most importantly, because childcare needs vary from family to family, and because provinces and territories have responded clearly that those needs vary in different ways across our communities, engagement with all partners will play a very important role in shaping the development of the early learning and childcare framework. Lifting Canadians out of poverty is a very important aspect of my mandate because Canadian families need support. Reducing poverty and improving the economic well-being of all Canadians has already started in Budget 2016. I will have the opportunity to lead the development of the first Canadian poverty reduction strategy. That will set targets to reduce poverty with clear measures that I will commit to track and report on. And I will be most happy to share that progress with members of this committee as we move forward. To deliver real and positive change, that which we promise Canadians, we need to work in close collaboration with stakeholders. This is an extremely important part of our collective mandate. We need to work in close partnerships with provincial, territorial, and municipal governments to ensure that our poverty reduction strategy complements their existing efforts. Our government has already started renewing our relationship, our so important relationship with Indigenous people, and it is critical that their needs and challenges are also addressed in that strategy. These collaborations may take a little time to develop, but we know that it will take us farther and, most importantly, in the right direction. These collaborations are indeed crucial to finding solutions and addressing key social issues that matter to all Canadians. To better make sure that Canadians get all the help they need and they deserve, and when they need it, the Government of Canada is taking action to make the delivery of government services more responsive. To ensure that Canadians get timely access to the benefits to which they are entitled, Budget 2016 proposes to provide $19 million in the next year to enable Service Canada, a critical agency, to meet the increased demand for services in general and specifically for EI, and offer better support to Canadians as they search for new employment. Budget 2016 proposes to further improve access to call centers by increasing the number of call center agents, which will reduce waiting times and ensure that Canadians can access the information and support they need and when they need it. Je ferai tout en mon pouvoir pour accroître la sécurité économique.
I will do everything in my power to increase economic and social security for all Canadians. Since taking office, Minister Mahaichuk, Minister Qualtrough, and I have already engaged in discussions with stakeholder groups, with our provincial, territorial, and municipal counterparts, as well as with many Canadians. I had the opportunity more recently to meet with the provincial and territorial ministers responsible for social services in Edmonton at the beginning of February. That was the first meeting of the Ministers' Forum for this year. We have resumed our constructive collaboration and dialogue. More recently, I also met different stakeholders all over the country in order to understand what the priorities are and to listen to them. It is together that we will find the best approach to deal with the most important issues for Canadians. And I firmly intend to help Canadians to raise the bar when it comes to openness and transparency. To conclude, I will work alongside my colleagues to reflect the values all Canadians embrace: inclusion, honesty, hard work, and generosity of spirit. Together, We will chart a new course for Canada. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I remember telling my family that I was chairing, when I learned that I was going to be chairing the Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Protection of Peoples with Disabilities Committee, and they thought that I was on 3 committees. And hearing the breadth of the issues and things that we're going to be dealing with today, questions I'm sure are going to be all over the map. They may not be wrong. This may need to be 3 committees. So without further ado, we're going to move on to the questions. Thank you all again, ministers, for your words. First up, we have Gerard Deltal.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Alors, salutations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My questions are for Minister Sterling, Mr. Duclos, who I know because we have been riding neighbors for some time. This is the first time we've had the opportunity to meet, and even though we have significant disagreements with regards to vision, I would like to pay tribute to him.
Because, well, this guy is a good fellow. He has a great resume, a great experience, a good scholar, and I want to pay all my respect to him. When someone of his stature wants to run, it's all the political class who wins. And I want to welcome you in the House of Commons, even if we entered the House exactly the same time. The first time we met, it was on Canada Day, so it was on a good sign. But, well, it was the rainiest day of the summer in Quebec that day. So we were so far away from the so-called sunny ways and sunny days. And speaking of that, I want to talk about this issue especially. Parce que, Monsieur le Président, là où nos chemins se séparent, c'est justement sur la...
Mr. Chair, I disagree with the vision when it comes to managing public funds. We agree with the Minister that we must contribute to families, and we had done so with the Universal Child Care Benefit. Our approach was different, but the help that we wanted to give was going to be granted directly to families because we considered it to be the right thing to do. Parents knew what to do in the best interest of their children, and we share the same vision there. But where our paths diverge is when it comes to managing public funds. We did so without a deficit, whereas the current government is creating a $30 billion deficit. Mr. Chair, my question is simple. How can the minister give amounts to families that it simply does not have? How can the government spend billions of dollars, create a deficit, therefore a debt, which our children will have to pay in order to give money that we actually do not have? Thank you, Mr. Deltel, and I would like to return your compliments to you. You may not know it, but because of your presence and influence throughout the last few years, you have truly marked the region of Quebec through your political commitment. You may know, or you will find out, I hope, that many people respect that commitment. Also respect your attitude of openness, the fact that you are welcoming, and your close relationships with citizens. I had the opportunity over several years to observe your work, and as a young politician, perhaps less young and not as young in years, and I'm hoping to learn quickly. Now, when it comes to the more substantive question, as you all know, economic growth has been unfortunately weak over the last 10 years. We can't go back. We also know that 2015 was a difficult year for Canada. There was a recession for 6 months out of 12. Over the last 2 years, economic projections for Canada have constantly gone down. That means we're in a situation where not only are Canadians suffering from insecurity, but they want leadership throughout the Canadian government and the country, not only in regions where situations for Canadians are particularly severe. By severe, I am referring to places deeply affected by the drop in natural resources prices. There's also parts of the country where young people and not so young people are looking for jobs where they don't have enough security. When it's time to found a family, especially when people are young, we know that investments in childcare are very important. But this investment is being done at a time when families often have more limits on their time. at the beginning of their career, they have to invest in their career in order to prepare their own futures. Conditions are difficult. They may not have a great deal of savings. There's often a mortgage. These young families are facing especially serious limits, which can limit their opportunities in the short term and also undermine their ability to invest in the well-being of their own children to ensure that their family and their children have a promising future. More and more, Canadians want the government to re-engage and to support growth. And they want it to support economic growth and growth for the middle class. It is in this spirit that the government has taken measures through Budget 2016. We are going to invest substantial resources. We're going to invest responsibly. With your help, we are going to be able to get there in order to make sure that those investments are responsible and inclusive to support everyone's economic well-being. Mr. Chair, I agree with everything that the minister has said, but he didn't answer my question. Everything that you're doing is being done at a loss. It's being done with a deficit. It's being done with money that we don't have. It's being done with a bill that we are sending our children, our grandchildren even that aren't even born, who are going to pay the money that we're giving out today because we don't have it. It's great to give money to people. We're not against it, but we have to have it in hand first. We did a balanced budget when we gave the Canada Child Benefit, but your program is going to lead to deficits and giving money that we do not have. Why is that? 2 points to respond to that question, Mr. Chair, if you will allow. Very quickly. First of all, this is what Canadians are expecting of us. They want us to grow the economy, and they want us to help the middle class, which is facing significant difficulties. We could have acted differently. We could have reduced government expenditures by $18 billion. In order to take into account the significant slowdown of economic growth. Those $18 billion come from the fact that in 2015, we had a significant recession. It lasted for 6 months out of 12, and the fact that over the last few years, growth has been very slow. $18 billion is the approximate amount that families are receiving now with government assistance programs. It's 9 times higher than what we spend on social housing. It's about 200 times more than what we spend on fighting homelessness. It's half of all EI benefits. It's half of what we give to OAS and GIS. But I think our approach is preferable.
Welcome, all 3 ministers. It's great having you here. With respect to my colleagues' comments, what we had previously was not working. Throughout the campaign that I ran, more and more we saw people struggling every single day just to get by. And to me, that's an issue. In my riding of Pitt Meadows Maple Ridge, like many others across our country, there is a pressing need to increase support for low-income and social housing. Can Minister Duclos please elaborate on changes to the affordable housing model outlined in Budget 2016? In particular, how will these changes tangibly impact low-income communities across Canada?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, thank you for bringing that topic up. I think there are 2 things in relation to that question. The first one is a short-term engagement, and the second one is a longer-term engagement on the part of the Government of Canada. So first, we know that the housing needs of Canadians, including in particular the lower income and middle income Canadians, are very high in many parts of our country. So we have heard that very strongly over the last months and the last year. So we are conscious of that, and we know that those needs need real rapid reinvestment, and that's what we'll do. The overall number is about $2.3 billion over 2 years, which is a very significant investment, which adds to the investment by CMHC, which is also already substantial. So for a shorter-term engagement, re-engagement of the federal government in assisting the housing needs of our citizens in a very significant manner. And the longer-term agenda is to, as I said briefly in my remarks, is to engage in a national housing strategy so that over the longer term, and we've been hearing that so much over the last few months, over the longer term, Canada, the Canadian government can operate most effectively with the many other partners that we have across our nation. And that includes provinces and territories, it also includes municipalities, and a large number of stakeholders and partners who are extremely interested in assisting the housing needs of our citizens. So 2 stages, and I think working together we can ensure that those 2 stages are the most effective and inclusive possible.
Thank you. We know that if we want to grow our economy, we have to get people back to work. We know this. But people can't get back to work if they have no place to go, they have no place to live. So as a follow-up, how will this increase in funding be allocated and work in partnership with provincial programming and funding?
Thank you again for this question. So let me be slightly more specific. We are investing over 2 years $200 million to assist seniors housing. We are investing $600 million to renovate and provide energy retrofits and water savings devices to our affordable and social housing stock. We are also investing $100 million more for the first time in 18 years to support those groups that help our homeless population. And we're going to invest about $100 million in providing shelters for women and children fleeing from violence. All of that, plus the significant housing investments that we'll make for our northern and First Nation communities, all of that does not require matching on the part of provinces. What requires matching on the part of provinces is our doubling of our investment in the investment for affordable housing, which will move from $250 million to $500 million over the next 2 years. That will enable provinces and territories, with the matching that they will also do, to do 3 things. First, to renovate the existing stock. Second, to construct new affordable housing. And third, to support our families, those families that need that stock of social housing and affordable housing to live in decent and secure conditions.
Thank you very much. So I know that you've been flying back and forth across the country and meeting with plenty of stakeholders. It's, I'm sure, quite an eye-opening experience to see everything that's going on. Do you believe that this increase in funding will provide communities with sustainable solutions to housing for low-income families? Do you believe, after everything you've seen in your travels, is that what you believe?
Well, the 2 steps that I mentioned are crucial. So first, we're signaling that we want the Government of Canada to be back again in supporting the housing needs of our citizens. Now, we have signaled the type of resources that we are willing to invest. Most importantly is how to use these resources most effectively, because however much we are going to invest, it's always going to be below the needs of our citizens. So we need to be extremely responsible in making sure that those resources which we are going to invest are invested in the most appropriate manner. And for that, we will require the strong collaboration of our partners, and there are many of them, and all very, very willing and very committed to help us. The collaboration of these partners, provinces, territories, municipalities, and all kinds of stakeholders in Canada, to make sure again that those resources have the greatest impact possible, especially for those Canadians that need it most.
Thank you, Minister. Now over to Ms. Ashton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome to all 3 ministers for joining us here today. My questions are directed more to Minister Mahajchuk and her portfolio. So first of all, in terms of employment insurance, we have heard from witnesses, as well as we know from stakeholders, including representatives from the labour movement, that the current regional threshold arrangement for EI does not make sense. Many workers, including those in the resource sector, are finding themselves excluded. We're particularly concerned, and of course it was raised today in question period on numerous occasions, about the exclusion of unemployed workers in Edmonton and southern Saskatchewan in both regions that have been hit hard by the drop in oil and gas and major layoffs in those sectors. Given the sharp rise in unemployment, we'd like to hear what the government's plan is to deal with extend these benefits as soon as possible, given that these workers are hurting significantly, like workers in the other 12 regions that were identified in this budget.
Well, there's no doubt about it that the commodity price drop has impacted actually many Canadians across the country. Anybody who worked to support the resource sector will probably feel the pain. And in a broader sense, it illustrates how closely our economy and our lives are to the resource sector. So whether you live in an urban downtown condo or you're up north or in the oil fields of Alberta, this has had a devastating effect on many, many people. So we had to look at how we could quickly address the serious challenge that was, raised by the drop, by the calls from workers, by the Premier's calls, and by selecting criteria that captured the most severe needs, given that what we wanted to do was attempt to provide extra supports for those that need it most. And just like employment insurance itself is not the same for each of the 62 regions, those differences existed because it's like any other insurance. It's going to, there are different costs for different, like if you look at automobiles, to repair a different car. So the regions are established for the economic criteria of that area, their ability to create other work opportunities, and therefore the benefits will be longer to obtain and shorter if it's a very strong economy. We continue in terms of the areas that fell within that mandate. It turned out that there were 12 regions that
Sorry, Minister, I'm talking about Edmonton and southern Saskatchewan. I appreciate the overview. My time is limited, and I'm keen to hear the government's plan for those two regions in particular.
So there are many regions that are close to the criteria. The criteria looked at 2% increase of unemployment plus a very sharp rise at a sustained level. There are several areas in the country that did not meet that threshold. But there are changes, and in some regions we've seen the increase of jobs. In other areas, we continue to see the loss of jobs. So we're monitoring the situation, and we must look at this as the months go by.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm concerned to hear about the lack of a timeline. While I appreciate ongoing monitoring, I'm sure that's cold comfort for the thousands of workers and families who are facing very difficult times in these two particular regions. So we're certainly going to continue to push the government for immediate action on that front, given that the needs are so significant. I'd like to move on to the issue of temporary foreign workers. And a couple of weeks ago, we were very concerned to hear about the signing of permits in February with regards to certain seasonal industries that will allow employers in these industries to bring in an unlimited number of temporary foreign workers for 2016, as long as the worker's employment period is short-term and lasts for less than 6 months. This flies in the face of the commitment that we heard from your government, Madam Minister, with regards to the importance of a review process prior to signing these kinds of permits. We know that the temporary foreign worker program has been rife with exploitation of workers that are the most disempowered in our country. We're very concerned about the lack of access to citizenship that these workers have, and we're most concerned about the fact that this decision to allow for these permits took place without a review and, frankly, without much transparency whatsoever. Now, yes, our committee is going to begin conducting a review sometime that will begin before the summer break, although one would argue that this issue is so important that we could have been taking it on perhaps sooner. But all to say, given this situation, I'm wondering, are there any written reports that guided you in making that decision in terms of signing these permits? And if that is the case, you know, a report that seeks to provide justification for these exemptions. And if so, could you speak to these reports? Could we see evidence of these reports that lead us to understand what exactly is going on here?
Well,
Literally very quickly, about 10
all
to
right.
15 seconds. Sorry.
All right. The issue came up that the areas that were addressed could not meet the needs of the companies, and we were vulnerable to lose many of those businesses and the work that they were conducting. The previous system set up by the Conservative government was not sensitive enough to deal with the pressure, and this extension has precedence in that it was done last year under the Conservative government as well.
Thank you. Moving on to Mr. Sanga.
My question is to Mr. Dukas. We have seen your speech in that you told that already there were a lot of new programs announced in the budget for families, like middle class tax cuts and child benefits. My question is, can you expand on some of those programs which will help families to make their lives easier? And second, what are the expected outcomes of those programs?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Let me say 4 different aspects of the budget which are more relevant to families. The first wasn't in budget, but it was just before the budget, the reduction of the tax on middle class families. We know that it's going to decrease taxes by an average of about $330 per adult for those 9 million citizens that will benefit from the cut in their taxes, their income taxes. Second, the significant investment in families from the Canadian Child Benefit. So it's a budget of $23 billion. That's going to decrease, first going to benefit 9 families out of 10, this we know, by an average of $2,300. We also know that it's going to take 300,000 children out of poverty. I've said earlier that it will bring Canada to the lowest level of child poverty ever. And it's also going to be the biggest fall in child poverty through a single measure. And that's because it's going to reduce the child poverty rate from about 11.2% to 6.7%. So that's a major outcome when we know that, again, it's not only the short-term well-being that matters, but it's also the longer-term impact of those investments that are important. And third, the child care or in early learning investment we want to make. Now we have announced resources in the budget for that. As I mentioned quickly, we in February and ever since, when we talk to our colleagues in provinces and territories, what we hear all the time is that the involvement of the federal government is extremely important, but must be respectful of the diversity of circumstances, interests and ambitions of our provinces and territories. So this is the universal, constant message we are receiving and we have been receiving. And finally, the significant investment in housing, which is going to help seniors, Indigenous people in our northern communities, but also our families with children, especially, again, those families struggling to meet ends, or how is that? Make ends meet. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're done? Okay. And are you sharing your time, or?
I'm sharing the time with you.
Okay. Monsieur Robert.
Bonjour à vous tous.
Hello to everyone. To all of our ministers present, I would like to thank you for your presence here today and for the testimony that you have provided to this committee. I would like to now move on to my question. Ms. Qualtrough, with Mr. Duclos, you share the mandate of developing a national law on persons with disabilities in order to eliminate systematic obstacles and to guarantee equal opportunity to all handicapped persons in Canada. Up to date, can you tell us what those systematic obstacles would be that limit equal opportunity for handicapped persons.
Your question is a very important one. As I said in my opening remarks, one of the things that we know is a legislative gap in our current system is the frustration many of us face as advocates when we have to wait until people are discriminated against to help them. And one of the things we also know is there's a disproportionate burden on individuals with disabilities to address systemic issues through our current human rights structure. We also know that 50% of the complaints to the Canadian Human Rights Commission are on the ground of disability. So we know that there are systemic issues at play. What I can tell you is those issues are their accessibility, so physical access is often denied or minimized, and they're also attitudinal. So people have assumptions, people have incorrect knowledge about ability, and people really focus on what they don't know about what someone with a disability can do instead of what we'd like them to know. What I would say is giving me the mandate to create a Canadians with Disabilities Act, which I have now taken to calling accessibility legislation because I believe it's more inclusive, gives us a chance to have historic conversations at the national level that have never been had around disability issues. This will give Canadians with disabilities an unprecedented opportunity to talk about sometimes difficult and very personal obstacles that they face in their full participation in society. And so as we move forward, I would say this is a historic opportunity for us all to listen, to contribute, and to really make the lives of Canadians with disability, which is 14% of our population and growing as our population ages, better and more inclusive. Thank you.
Okay, that's actually the end of the shared time, but we're going back to Mr. Robillard, so there you go.
Alors, que pouvez-vous nous dire plus précisément?
What can you tell us more specifically about the challenges that handicapped persons who have visual disabilities have to face and what you expect to do in order to assist them?
And Sarah, if you could see the font of my speaking notes, you would all be, you'd believe me. For people with visual impairments, the challenge is often that the disability is hidden. So it's not obvious sometimes that someone can't see you. It's not obvious sometimes that people can't read the material you're providing them. So along with some more concrete accessibility measures, such as our recent introduction in the House of a law to eventually ratify and accede to the Marrakesh Treaty, which I thank all of you for your support. We need to again challenge the assumptions that are made around people and their ability. There are feelings of severe social isolation that come with not being able to visually participate in the world in the same way as others. And there's also a lack of comprehension around how people interact with the world. I can tell you in sport, for example, because that's my other passion, we know that it takes a child who is legally blind, such as myself, so that would be someone who has less than 10% corrected vision. It takes that child 7 times to experiencing a certain skill or experience to the sighted child's 1 time before they get the same experience or the same benefit from that experience. So it's not just enough to teach someone how to run. You have to give them 7 chances to do that same skill. And so that creates some barriers to inclusion. We know that there are 800,000 Canadians who are visually impaired, and we know that, again, referring back to Marrakesh, that even not having access to printed material in alternate format means there's barriers to education, there's barriers to employment, there's barriers to full participation in political and social life. I can tell you I personally experienced some times during the campaign where I couldn't participate in a debate because they handed out questions that were in a small font, or I had to ask for help, and it felt very vulnerable and off-putting when you're in a nervous new situation anyway. But I think it's really important that, again, we take the opportunity provided by the consultation process to educate ourselves as Canadians around the various forms of disability and impairment that our fellow Canadians experience, but also to be a little more open-minded about potential and the way that people contribute to our society. And the more access we have, the more we can contribute. And so I would, again, encourage you all to be open-minded.
Merci.
So you again? Sharing your time? Okay. Ms. Tassi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to echo what everyone has said around the table to welcome the three ministers for being here this afternoon and for your opening remarks, as well as the support team that's with you, and for all your work. I know work as a minister is very challenging and difficult, so I thank each of you for that. My question is to Minister Qualtrough. Let me start by saying I appreciate the passion that you bring to the ministry with which you've been charged, and it's very refreshing and wonderful to hear you speak the way that you do and how much you care about, you know, the people that you're serving, Canadians. I'm going to ask a question with respect to accessibility. People not living with difficulties related to disability, several things appear to us to be invisible. I mean, you've just mentioned that. And I've worked with high school students for the past 20 years, and as an advocate and as a counselor. And I know the very things that you've mentioned. They often have trouble coming and asking for help with different issues. So it's things such as not having an automatic door that would open, needing help in the bathroom because the sinks aren't at the right height, because there's no bar rails, bringing them out to co-op positions, and the offices are not designed in a way that's wheelchair accessible, that, you know, they can move around. And I know through working with these young people, and it's not just related to young people, it's all people, of course, but I worked with them, so I have firsthand experience, that there can be changes that are made that can make their lives a lot easier, and that they can be integrated into the workplace and into communities. So I'm asking, how does the government plan to help working environments and communities to adapt their facilities to ensure better integration of all Canadians? You mentioned the Accessibility Fund, so if you can speak a little bit about that, I'd be interested in hearing what you have to say.
About 1 minute. Okay, understood. The Enabling Accessibility Fund is designed for exactly the purposes you're talking about. So to increase accessibility, smaller projects, we have a $14 million annual budget, and I'm excited to say that in budget 2016, additional $4 million over 2 years was added. And with this, we can help employers and communities across the country make those accessibility improvements that really are barriers to full participation. So adding $4 million over 2 years, we anticipate around 80 small projects to be across the country. And if you think of each time there's a bar or a ramp or an automatic door, somebody doesn't have to ask for help and somebody feels included. So it's a big bang for your buck. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. And we are going now to Mr. Warwa.
Thank you, and thank you to the ministers for spending some time with us today. As the critic for seniors, that's going to be the focus of my questions, but I appreciate each of you being here. Just before I get into that, I think it's important that each of us be willing to work with one another, and that our comments are respectful to one another. And I think you can get a lot done if we're all rowing in the same direction, so to speak. The EI premiums for workers, that was Minister Mahaichuk was, I think it was in your mandate, to give a break for EI premiums for employers to hire younger workers into permanent positions. I think that's one of your priorities, and I agree with that, and I don't see that in the budget. I would hope that is something that you would consider, and it's never too late to change the budget until it passes. I also compassionate care. That's a passion of mine. I think it's very important that we take care of people in the last days of their life, showing them love, respect, and dignity. And the EI Compassionate Care Benefit is one of those ways. Previous government was Minister Robillard, and it was very restrictive who would qualify for compassionate care. Working with departments was able to change the very prescriptive. A sister could not take care of a sibling, and so we changed that, letting the dying person choose who is going to provide the care. And now it's been expanded even more as far as time. But what I'm hearing from seniors when I'm going around meeting with seniors and consulting is there's a lot of seniors that are being cared for that, and it's somebody taking care of them. And it's not EI. They're doing it out of their own goodwill, but there's a cost associated with that. They're not able to work and support themselves, or they're working part-time. And it's physical, emotional, it's hard work, it saves taxpayers money. And so if they could get a tax benefit in some way, if the government could look at that, I'm hearing from Canadians. So Minister Duclos, your mandate is a national housing strategy, a poverty reduction strategy, and Service Canada improving their service delivery. I've heard just recently that people waiting until 8 o'clock when Service Canada opens up, and they phone immediately, and then immediately, within seconds, they're getting a recorded message due to the high call load. Your phone number, yeah, I was quite shocked too, Roger. But anyway, I think Service Canada, we need to look at that because people are immediately being putting on a long waiting list to try to get through, and these are people that need help. Minister Duclos, I have a question for you, and it's regards to the extra support for a senior that's alone. And I think you mentioned in that, yes, we plan to increase additional benefits to the guaranteed income supplement for seniors living alone by nearly $1,000 a year. There are a lot of seniors that are not living alone that also need the guaranteed income supplement. They may be living with their partner or spouse, and there's just as much need there. And so my question is, why would we would exclude somebody that is living with a spouse or partner, that is a senior, that is in poverty, that qualifies for the guaranteed income supplement?
Good. Thank you. Well, let me start by also showing a sign of respect. I think you started by signaling the importance of being respectful, and I agree. I share with you the view that the more respect we show to each other, the better the chance we'll work appropriately together, and the better the chance we'll make this important forum very useful for our respective mandates. And I certainly hope to be able to count on this committee in the forthcoming work to draw guidance and support from you, whatever position we happen to have in this particular Parliament. Now, on the issue of seniors, well, for Service Canada, if you haven't asked a question, you made a comment, but if you want, I can say that it's a very important aspect of my mandate, and if you want, I have some very good officials around me who would love to manifest the type of ambitions and the type of circumstances that we have in mind at this particular time. Now, for the seniors, 70%, more than 70% of seniors still living in poverty now are singles, and among those 70% of single seniors living in poverty, more than 70% are women. So we have chosen to address the issues faced by those single vulnerable seniors for that particular reason, because more of them are living currently in poverty. There's also in most cases, a greater situation of vulnerability because they don't have a spouse with whom they can rely, or with whom they can collaborate. So both the economic and the social vulnerability of these single seniors, the majority of whom again are female, happen to be quite large. So we have heard that over the last year, we have heard that in the campaign, and that's why we have committed to assisting them in the budget.
Thank you. Sir, that's You got actually, we allowed it to go 45 seconds past.
Thank you. Thank
you. We're going back to Ms. Tassi, please.
Sorry. Mr. Chair, I'll be sharing my time with MP Long. Minister Qualtrough, back to you. I'm just wondering if you can explain how the new Canada Child Benefit is going to work in conjunction with the Child Disability Benefit to bring more support for lower and middle income families caring for disabled children.
Yeah, thank you very much. I should start off that I would defer to my colleague on the details of the Child Canada Benefit, but what I can say is, any money in the hands of any parent with a child with a disability, any more money is greatly appreciated because the cost of having a child with a disability is significant, and the more significant the impairment, the higher the cost. So, Minister Duclos, I don't know if you have anything to add. I apologize, it's not within my mandate, but I fully support it.
Now, I'm about to quote you a figure, but I'm almost certain to have it wrong. So any of my dear officials would know the exact figure that applies to the benefits for handicapped children?
We'll find out.
Okay, so the answer is that we'll find out, and we'll make that known to the entire, I think, the entire committee would like to know that.
Thank you. And to Mr. Long, you have about 4.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the three ministers for coming today. I think it's quite rare that we get three ministers to come in for a full 2 hours, so I really appreciate the committee. I know appreciates you taking the time. I guess I have a few questions for everybody, but I'll start with Minister Mahaichuk. Minister, in the recent budget, there is an increase in funding to the labour market development agreements and Canada Job Fund agreements for the purpose of enhancing investments and training for unemployed and underemployed Canadians. Would you elaborate for the committee on how you think the increases in funding will further support skills training and then help those people gain increased access to the job market?
Well, we're very proud to be able to provide more funding to our partners, the provinces and the territories, and we share the responsibility in training and skill development with those partners. And the reason for that is that they know their workforce and the needs and opportunities better than a federal jurisdiction. So we are in not only challenging economic times, although last month was nice to see an increase of 40,000 jobs, but we are in a program where we are going to enhance the funding finally to our provincial and territorial partners. So for instance, in the Canada Job Fund Agreement and Canada Job Grant, we are actually increasing that component. The LMDs are increasing by 50 million in 2016 and 17, and the LMDAs, which
125.
are also getting an increase, and in that case, it's $125 million in this budget. So it's a start to address what we've seen as a shortfall, and I think that we're going to see on-the-ground training and opportunities for individuals, which is sorely needed.
Another question actually for Minister Mahaichuk. My colleague opposite, I was actually quite surprised to hear him talk about the waiting times for service reps. And I mean, I think service delivery standards were decimated under their previous government. They cut 600 positions from the EI process and EI call centers. It was their government that did that. So if Canadians are waiting for service reps, like wouldn't you not agree that the cut of 600 service reps may have had something to do with that? And Minister, what's your plan to fix that?
Well, there's no doubt at all that there have been drastic reductions and cost-saving measures to balance the budget. And if they're in tune with rapid adoption of modern initiatives or modern ways of delivering service, chat rooms, the web service, then that can be working in harmony. In this case, we saw massive cuts of human resources leaving the front line without that human representative that many seniors require. There are many seniors and immigrants that come to the service centres, stand in line, and aren't able to see them. So we're very proud to be investing $73 million over 2 years to provide service to Canadians and when and where they need them. So when they pick up the phone, there's actually going to be somebody there. And if they come in and see a person into our service centre, there's going to be somebody there, and enhance our call centres. So you'll be able to get through, which is our number one concern, the ability to serve Canadians.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you. Going now to Mr. Ginas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much to the ministers for being here. I appreciate this opportunity. I want to start by asking a question to Minister Qualtrough. Minister, I met with a mum in my riding on Saturday, a mum of children with autism, and she had a specific concern that I'd like to share with you and maybe get some of your feedback on. She's had some trouble with CRA, recognizing certain purchases that she's made as necessary equipment to help her children operate, especially in the area of modern technology. CRA has a tendency, in her experience, to identify things like maybe an iPad or speech apps that are really important for their participation in society, and to look at those and say, well, those look like toys. And that creates a real problem for her. So I wonder if you could comment on that, and I'd really appreciate if you'd be open to talking to your Cabinet colleagues about this and seeing if there's some way that these concerns can be addressed.
First of all, yes, and I can tell you thank you for the question, because you're certainly not the first one that has brought that to my attention. As I said earlier, one of the things I'm excited about in having our consultation around accessibility legislation is I'm hoping that a lot of these, and this is one of them I would suggest, issues that are within federal jurisdiction that wouldn't fall squarely within the four squares of our legislation can be brought to the surface and can then be addressed. One of the things that I'm hoping to do, and one of the things that we're looking at now, is looking across the government to do a horizontal environmental scan, if you will, of programs and policies, and to see the language that is used, and to see the barriers that exist, whether they're direct or indirect, to participation or to accessing the service. The service you're talking about is, ironically, the less expensive the technology and the more common, the more difficult it is sometimes to get that technology approved, which seems counterintuitive. And I would suggest that I absolutely would certainly like to hear from you and from all of you as we move forward and develop this language and this greater common access on examples just like that of how the government can improve our accessibility. So thank you.
Minister, I appreciate your understanding, and I hope that's an area we'll be able to all work together on across party lines on, because I think some of those changes definitely need to happen. Minister Duclos, I wanted to ask you about income splitting. I know that perhaps we have a bit of a philosophical difference when it comes to income splitting, but I've never really understood the argument against it, because income splitting, yes, it's a tax cut, but really it's about tax fairness. It's about the idea that if you have two families that are earning the same family income, that they should pay the same amount of tax. If you have one family that's earning $60,000 because one person is making 30 and the other person's making 30, and then you have another family that's making $60,000 because one is making $45,000 and the other's making $15,000. Now, under an income splitting system, both of those families pay the same amount of money in tax. Under a system without income splitting, they don't pay the same amount of tax. So it seems to me just sort of intuitive that if you have two different families with the same family income, they should pay the same rate, the same amount of tax. But your government disagrees. The effect of the change you've made, eliminating income splitting in this budget, means that families who make different kinds of choices that are, in their view, good for their families, will pay more tax, will pay a higher rate of tax. As a father of young children, as someone who represents a riding with many young families. This doesn't make any sense to me. I wouldn't ever judge the childcare choices that any family makes, but I would suggest that families should pay the same rate of tax if they earn the same income. I'd appreciate your comments on that.
About 1 minute, sir.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for the kind questions. Let me open the parenthesis for regarding the earlier answer. I should have known the answer by heart, but it's the child disability benefit remains up to a maximum of $2,730. So that's the precise number which I didn't remember by heart. So the answer was faster than I thought it would be. Now, regarding the income splitting, well, first, there are three reasons that militate against income splitting measures. The first one is simplicity. Now, we are assisting families with the Canadian Child Benefit in a very simple manner, non-taxable, every month, one transfer, so families, transparency, simplicity is greatly enhanced through this particular measure. The second reason is that as we keep saying, I think we all agree on that, it's those families that need it most that should receive support from the Kenyan government. Our resources, as I said earlier, are always going to be limited. We need to invest in those families that need our support most, and income splitting doesn't do that. And third, we also, in a modern economy in which often the two spouses work. Now, income splitting is going to impose on the spouse that has a lower income the same marginal tax rate faced by the spouse that has a higher income. And still, nowadays, that spouse that has the lowest income is the woman. So income splitting discourages labor force participation on the part of those lower income spouses. And again, it's the women that typically are lower paid. So because income splitting imposes the same marginal tax rate on the same people in the couple, that's not the way we think the tax system should operate.
Thank you, Minister. Ms. Ashton, please.
And I'll be sharing my time with my colleague, Madame Sanssouci.
Minute question.
Yeah, so I'll just make it quick. My question is to Minister Duclos, but as well to Mr. Siddall, who just a few weeks ago talked about the state of the housing in First Nations, or the state of housing stock on First Nations as being abysmal. A statement, I believe, that was very much supported by many people living on First Nations, including those in our constituency. However, oftentimes CMHC has been a barrier when First Nations have tried to seek solutions. I've heard about the major commitments to financial commitments to First Nations housing in this budget, something that is very much appreciated, although many communities also say that that is too limited. But also, there are a number of First Nations that are very interested in pursuing opportunities to build their own homes on reserve. That is also, sourcing lumber from their own territory, involving training opportunities, and ultimately, of course, benefiting from the homes that they build. Is CMHC, as part of the conversations that you're wanting to engage in, prepared to look at those options that are being asked for by First Nations themselves?
Thank you for the kind question. I'll provide the first part of the answer and let Mr. Siddall provide the rest. So first, as you said, our brothers and sisters in Indigenous communities need our support in a very significant manner in two different ways. First, in the attitude, and second, the actions. I think we want to change both. And the attitude is certainly certainly going to be different on a nations-to-nations basis. And the resources, the actions, as you rightly mentioned, are going to be important. So I'm not going to mention the numbers. You know those numbers, and let Mr. Siddall get on with some further details.
I'll reply directly to your very kind question by answering yes. We will be participating in consultations as part of the National Housing Strategy that Minister Duclos responded to, but also in the context of consultations with First Nations among ourselves, our colleagues at the Ministry of ESDC and INAC, in identifying needs among First Nations communities on reserve as well as Inuit communities in the north, so Indigenous populations as a whole, to hear from them. You will have noted, and I'll talk more on Wednesday about what's in the budget for Inuit and Northern housing as well as First Nations housing. It's a very high priority for us,
and we're delighted to follow the lead of the government of the day and continue to make more investments on housing for Indigenous communities.
Very, very briefly, sorry.
Merci. Ma question est pour le ministre.
Thank you. My question is for Mr. Duclos. In your report, you indicated that you'd be pleased to inform the committee of progress made in developing a poverty reduction strategy. Last February 16th, I tabled Bill C-245, which intends to develop just such a strategy. I would like to know what steps have already been achieved and what is expected to be done to develop this strategy. Thank you for the question. First step. The first step started well before the end of 2015 because I had the opportunity to talk to ministers in various provinces and territories and to talk to them about the mandate that I had received and that had been announced to the Canadian public. At the beginning of February, the second step in Edmonton, during the Ministers' Forum for Social Services, we started to discuss this important mandate, how to work together in order to develop this poverty reduction strategy. And since the beginning of February, I have meetings almost every day with different stakeholders in order to be able to achieve real progress and fast progress. Sometimes there's a conflict between real and fast progress. There's a certain amount of mediation to be done. We're doing things as quickly as possible, but we want to do things as well as possible. And that's why we appreciate your support and the support of all members of the committee. I think by working together, we can all make real, substantive progress. And I'd be happy to provide the details on the progress that we're making with this initiative.
Moving on to Mr. Warawa.
Thank you. I'll be sharing my time with Mr. Genis. Just a couple of quick points. The first in regard to the wait times at Service Canada. I just brought that to your attention. These calls that we've gotten from constituents saying it's a hard time to get to Service Canada. This is a recent situation, and hopefully you can look at that. The minister's been government now for half a year, and this is a recent problem. So I don't know what has changed at Service Canada recently, but it is a recent problem. In talking to the numerous stakeholders in Canada regarding seniors, there is a common request for a minister for seniors. Now, Minister Mahaichuk said that there is you have a minister for youth, and I believe that is the Prime Minister himself. And previous parliaments have had a minister for seniors. The very unique time that we find ourselves living in right now, 1 in 6 Canadians is a senior. I'm one of them. There are seniors around this table, Mr. Speaker. And it's a growing number, 1 in 6 right now. In 7 years, it'll be 1 in 5. And in 14 years, it'll be 1 in 4. There's this major shift in Canada, and for Canada not to have a minister for seniors, I'd encourage you to maybe raise that around the cabinet table, because it's very important and it's very concerning for a number of Canadians that there is no minister for seniors. They also are asking for a national senior strategy. To spend money and a lot of money without a plan, you've got to have a target to be able to hit it. And so you got to have a strategy. And so there's a call for a national senior strategy and also a national palliative care strategy. That was supported by the previous, in the last parliament, by Liberals and Conservatives and NDP and Green and Bloc. There was almost unanimous support in last Parliament for a national strategy in palliative care. It's critical. It's needed to take care of our seniors. And one last quick point, and then I'll hand this over to Mr. Genis. LNG. British Columbia is one of the economic engines in Canada. LNG is the future. We have a number of MPs from British Columbia. LNG is one of the cleanest sources of energy in the world, and if we get LNG, liquefied natural gas, shipped into Asia, it'll provide a much cleaner energy source for Asia. Instead of burning coal, they would burn natural gas. It's safe, And I really encourage, it creates jobs, and there's what is very unique right now is you see regularly in the BC newspapers that there's real concern that the decision on the LNG projects in British Columbia, the opportunity to get this billions of dollars of investment are right now, and there seems to be a delay from the government. So I encourage the government, to the ministers, to really seriously consider this. If we delay, we may lose this and an opportunity that would benefit BC and Canada. Thank you. Mr. Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Duclos, I wanted to just respond to your comments about income splitting and then hear your response back to those responses, if that's all right. You raised the issue of simplicity, and I find this a little odd, just because many, if not most, countries in the Western world have some form of income splitting. France, Ireland, Germany, Poland, Luxembourg, Spain, Portugal, the United States, there's other examples. I think if they can figure it out, we can too. And it's pretty simple that families that are making the same family income pay the same rate of taxes. And you said that this doesn't help the worst off. It's a tax fairness measure that was capped, you'll remember, at $2,000 in terms of the benefit it paid out, which ensured that the benefits were proportionately towards those at the middle and low end. And this comment about the higher marginal tax rate discouraging workforce participation, I mean, doesn't this contradict your whole justification for raising taxes on top income earners? Because you're raising taxes on top income earners on the basis, presumably, that it won't have a negative effect on their workforce participation and their productivity. And yet you're arguing in the context of income splitting that having that same marginal tax rate on potential new entrants into the workforce has a negative effect. So you can't have your cake and eat it too on those points, right? You have to choose one or the other. So I'd be curious for your comments on those points.
1 minute, sir.
That was my immediate question: how much time do we have left? Because these are very good questions. Now the answers will have to be limited. Well, let me maybe take one question and leave the other to Ms. Devonian, who will talk about Service Canada. First, the question on seniors. I think the important thing here is to recognize that the welfare of seniors belongs to all kinds of departments, and I happen to be one of those ministers that have a particularly important role for the welfare of seniors. And in a matter of few weeks, just with due respect, in a matter of few weeks, we've done quite a lot for seniors. We've increased the guaranteed income supplement and benefit 900,000 seniors. We have moved the age of eligibility to 65, and therefore saving 100,000 seniors out of poverty per year. We have announced $200 million to construct housing for seniors, which is quite something important. And we've also announced that we're going to index pensions for seniors according to the real costs faced by seniors. So it's quite an important array, just in my department, array of measures important for ministers. So to have a minister of seniors would have perhaps visibility advantages, but what is important is that decisive actions are taken by government on this particular aspect. And I would prefer to have ministers being decisive in their actions than a minister of seniors just being a communicator and perhaps a press person to sell policies decided and made by others in government. I'd say this with all due respect, of course, but I have an impression that seniors want actions and decisions as opposed to just media facilitators. Now, for Service Canada, I would let perhaps Ms. Devonian address that issue.
Very, very briefly, yes. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you for the question, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Service to Canadians is obviously something that's very important to Service Canada, and ensuring quality service is something very important to Service Canada. We obviously have service standards, and we monitor them very closely. And, you know, on internet, on telephone, on in-person, and generally speaking, those service standards are all met. The call centers is one area where there has been difficulty over the last number of years, but it's not a recent phenomenon.
Thank you. Mr. Rumi.
Thank you. Well, as a MP from British Columbia, I feel the need to respond to my colleague on the other side, who knows full well that while we choose not to ram projects down without the proper assessment, LNG has been sent back because it has not met the requirements as of yet for environmental, while we have passed a wood fiber one, which has passed the environmental. Just felt the need to tell that. My question is going to be towards Ms. Mahaichuk. I'm a big believer in EI programs. If we didn't have some of the EI programs, I would not be sitting here as an MP, because 7 years ago, I could not find a job. I struggled with the middle age gap. I struggled with wage gaps. I was just like everybody else, and I struggled too. It was because of a self-employment work program that I was able to get on with Douglas College in one of our regions, and that allowed me to start my own business, which led me to where I am today. So, having said that, while extending the Working While on Claim pilot project is an important step in connecting individuals to the labor market and integrate EI claimants back into the job market more successfully, could the Minister please elaborate on how this change in the employment insurance system, as well as other changes in support being offered to EI claimants, will support skills training and successfully re-enter into the workforce?
Well, the EI changes that we've made are quite extensive, and Working on Claim is one of those pilots that has been going on for over a decade. And actually, it needs some resolution in to make it a permanent program, but given that we have Phase 2 coming up, we've decided to renew it for a 2-year extension to the pilot. So it will allow Canadians to take opportunities to work while on claim, collecting EI benefits, and select the program that works best for them. So it's more generous than what was available, and it will allow them to become familiar with perhaps a new career, and for workplaces to also work with those employees. But we've also eliminated discriminatory practices like NERI. We've reduced the deductible and giving more money to people up front when they need it most to pay the rent, get food on the table, and get a new outfit to go find another job. We're going to also, we've also increased work sharing from 38 to 76 weeks, helping small business, and at the same time reducing EI premiums from $188 to $161. That is 4 cents lower than we projected. I should say that it's projected to be $161. If everything goes as expected, it'll be coming in at $161, a significant saving to not only workers but especially small businesses and employers. And additionally, we're providing that extra help for those areas that under other circumstances would have been able to create new jobs more quickly. So for those areas, we're extending benefits. And I think the program, through a number of both regular EI changes and special benefits, are there to help people when they need it most. So this is only Phase 1. There's more coming, including looking at compassionate care, flex time, parental leave, which I'm excited about, and it's a nice time to be looking at the overall program, and especially you guys are, the committee is looking at providing input to that, and that's going to be very, very important. Thank you for your work.
Thank you. How do you think these particular changes are relevant to the current job market and increased rates of unemployment in particular regions? What do you believe will be some of the tangible outputs we will see from increasing incentives to re-enter the job market and improve skills training for unemployed and underemployed people, even if these may be in sectors claimants may be less familiar with?
One of the things that Canada has used is the temporary foreign worker program, for example, for those areas where we said we didn't have Canadians. Well, we have a government that is saying it's Canadians first. It's very important that we provide training and opportunities to those people that are in those regions and are looking for work. And most Canadians I know want a job. There are Indigenous people who have not worked, not been given an opportunity. It's our disabled population, come highly skilled, willing to work. So there are many also, in addition, many women who don't have access to childcare and are therefore not able to be active in the workforce, and they're forced to take vulnerable jobs. So these changes are a step forward to make Canada the more inclusive country that we all want. And I think we're going to see increases in opportunities for Canadians, Indigenous, young people, whose unemployment rate is more than double the regular population. And as they're educated, they still can't find work, an untenable situation that must be addressed. So we're going to see more people in the workplace in a more modern, flexible, and compassionate Canada.
Thank you, Minister. On to Ms. Ashton.
Great, thank you very much. And I would like to come off of that point that you raised, Minister, around the particular situation that young people are facing, the job market that young people are facing, and the rise of precarious work. So right now we know that about 39% of young people are facing precarious work. This is, of course, beyond the fact that we also have many young people that are just simply unemployed. And so one of the pieces, of course, that comes with precarity is the inability to access the social safety net. And many young people are unable of accessing EI because they simply don't have enough hours. So we've heard from many stakeholders, we've heard from the Canadian Labour Congress, we've heard from the CCPA, and many others who've talked about the need for a universal threshold of 360 hours. And I'm wondering if that is something that your government is looking at to indeed meet people where they're at in the current job market.
Well, in Budget 2016, we were able to increase the work experience, which is often something that employers will say, young people need more experience, they need more training, so we're able to provide more access to post-secondary education, more co-op opportunities, more apprenticeship, and more summer jobs where they can get real hands-on experience. We're also eliminating the situation where young people would have to work sometimes twice as much as an average Canadian. That discriminatory action has been eliminated. Young people are going to work. We expect to see a change, and that's exactly why we have a Minister of Youth, that the situation for young people is serious and deserves attention. I'm very proud to be with a government that understands that.
Just quickly, and still on the issue of precarity, I'm wondering, we know just recently in the Ontario court came out with a decision on the Keenan versus Canuck Kitchens Limited case, and I'm wondering, and it was in that case where the Ontario Labour Ontario Labour Code is forced to look at the definition of contractors. I'm wondering, given the situation that many people face in Canada right now, being defined as independent contractors and therefore being unable to access EI, what steps your department is taking to bring the Labour Code up to speed to make sure that precarious workers working on contract in federal jurisdiction workplaces are able to access programs like EI, but also granted the same protections as other workers. So again, on the issue of workplace safety as well.
I want to thank the member on her question. It's obviously well read and knows these files very well. On the issue of contributions and benefits to contractors, I'm going to pass it over to the Deputy Minister of Labour. This is an area that is in my mandate and we intend to work on, but I'll ask the Deputy Minister to give us a quick update.
Thank you for your question on the precarious work. As you know, the Canada Labour Code, Part 3, deals with labour standards, and the question and the court case dealt with who is entitled to wages upon dismissal. The Minister has explicitly in her mandate to Minister Mihaichuk is to work with Minister Duclos together as part of the poverty reduction agenda. They are to review, and it says specifically in her mandate, the Fairness at Work report, which has several recommendations in it related to precarious work. Thank you.
You have about 2 more minutes if you wish.
Oh, great. Well, so I'm guessing what the timeline is for that review.
timeliness of the, I'll turn it to the Deputy Minister.
Thank you. The timeliness of the review is that we intend to start consulting on it. The report, as you may well know, is from 2006, and some of the recommendations have already been implemented. So I think we're going to take our time in the fall to consult and then get directions on a future agenda.
Okay, great. We look forward to more information on what on how that review is being proposed, and certainly timelines, and we're keen to see it be as transparent as possible so that Canadians who are deeply affected, increasingly affected, I would say, with the rise of precarity are engaged as much as possible. Monsieur Duclos, pour revenir à vous.
Mr. Duclos, to come back to you. In December of 2013, you produced a report, Quebec government's healthcare expenses, projections, and determinants. Your conclusions led us to understand that the aging population is a phenomenon that will affect the rest of Canada as well, and it will take more and more funds. Given that this budget does not seem to show a great deal of leadership in the matter of healthcare expenditures, do you think you need to review your position on social development and perhaps exert more leadership when it comes to the healthcare system and look at healthcare in a more comprehensive way for Canadians? Very quickly, thank you for having read my old report. I hope that it wasn't too boring. Two things. The first is the significant impact that demographic change is going to bring to our society, especially when it comes to healthcare, which I will come back to shortly. There are also many other aspects of our lives, both social and economic, that are affected. These are big changes, and it is in our interest to reflect on them and to work on them very carefully. Now, when it comes to healthcare, as you are aware, I'm not the minister responsible for that particular file, but in general, I think that we all agree that resources are going to be important, as it was already indicated in the report, or the article rather, and that resources are our key issue. There's a consensus around this table to say that the Canadian government, even though it may be provincial jurisdiction, I think that the Canadian government can hope to play a role in healthcare to facilitate, to encourage, and to support financially. But as healthcare and the more global agenda of health affects many people significantly, just about every province and territory is affected. Therefore, I think the Canadian government will wish to be present and to work with them and to support them as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you to all of the ministers and the officials for being here today. I will say, I know there's people that are itching to ask even more questions. I believe all of you will be here, the officials I should say, will be here on Wednesday. So if there's questions, I believe we can save them for then. I'd like to would also like to thank, of course, our fantastic interpreters in the back, as always, our technicians, the analysts and clerk team for making me look good, and for all of you for joining. We meet every Monday and Wednesday at 3:30. Please feel free to join us. We don't usually get this kind of crowd, but we do have a committee right after here today, so I do ask that as we break up, we move out into the hallway if there's any further conversation. Thank you very much, everybody.